So, when it comes to depression, autistics are 4 times more likely to experience depression than neurotypicals. It's easy to understand why. We often face more bullying, more barriers, and in general, more antagonism. We're seen as different from others, and as such, are shunned, mocked, and not listened to. We're still having the issue of people listening more to those who speak over us and promoting things like autism cure, harmful therapies, and inaccurate stereotypes. Autism speaks. As we become
Bless you.
as we become more aware of the fact that these things are happening, the more depressed we get. It's why autistic adults are more likely to experience depression than autistic children. As adults, we're able to see what's actually going on. It doesn't help that we also have a habit of ruminating. We look back on our lives and all the mistakes we've made in the past, and they drag us down. Like the number of times I've made myself depressed because I obsessed over something embarrassing I did like 20 years ago. So, when it comes to autism and depression, there are two types that we have to deal with. There's primary depression, which is depression that has no connection with our autism. Stuff like life stresses and such. A current cause of primary depression for a lot of us right now is the pandemic. It's caused so many problems that depression in everyone honestly feels inevitable. This is a depression that would exist whether or not we were autistic. If someone passes away, if, you know, pet runs away, you know, you lose your job because the company went bankrupt. This is all stuff that has nothing to do with your autism. Basically, like everyone faces. Of course, then there's secondary depression, which is depression experienced because we're autistic. Social rejection, isolation, ableism, and the like. It's depression we wouldn't be facing if we weren't autistic. Autistics aren't the only ones who deal with secondary depression. Basically, any like minority faces it, as well as women, since technically there are more percentage wise, there's more women than men, so they can't really be called a number minority, I guess a power minority. Pretty much anyone who can say, I wouldn't be dealing with this depression if I wasn't X. X being, trans, gay, black, etc. Of course, there are certain forms of secondary depression that only neurodivergents deal with, like having a special interest that causes you to be depressed. We don't get to choose our special interests. So if we end up hyperfixating on something that causes depression, it can be really tough. One big problem we autistics have to deal with is that depression can be harder to diagnose in us since there are some overlapping symptoms. Some of them are things like social withdrawals, um, low motivation, losing interest in something you like, and problems with eating and sleeping. It's difficult to be able to point to low motivation and tell whether it's depression or executive dysfunction, or being able to tell if you lost interest in something because you're depressed, or your brain has just moved on from that hyperfixation. Not to mention that we tend to show our emotions differently than neurotypicals, or have a lot of trouble identifying our own emotions. So, talking to a professional about our emotions can be really difficult when we don't have any way of describing what we're feeling. So, those professionals who were educated and trained to work with neurotypicals with depression may not know what exactly to look for. It's not often that people are formally trained to work with autistic adults. So finding someone who specializes in both depression and autistic adults, or autism in general, is probably like finding a needle in a haystack. Although it would appear that depression, although depression looks different in autistics and neurotypicals, some of the strategies used to help neurotypicals have been found to help autistics as well. Um, I am going to be talking about. I should probably do a live stream about autistic burnout sometime. Sorry, just reading comments. Sorry, I get distracted easily. So, some of the strategies, social support is a big one. When surrounded, not like literally surrounded, but you have people who love you, listen to you, and do what they can to help you. And I mean, actually help you, not just do what they think will help you. It makes sense that your depression levels would drop when you have people you can lean on. This is true for everyone. Having a good support system of loved ones does wonders for people. I know it's helped me. This includes people online as well. Your support system can be entirely online. Online friends, online support groups, these are valid. It bugs me when people disregard the validity of online connections. Um, well, I'm happy to see you here, Miriam. Yeah, support systems in schools and workplaces and forms of accommodations also help. It's a lot easier to fight off depression when your needs are being accommodated for and you feel like people actually care about you because, yeah, it can be pretty soul crushing when you're at school or you're at workplace that you know does not care about you and is just sort of like, oh, you're not working hard enough? Okay, we're just going to replace you. I can drag anyone down. Now, medication, on the other hand, is different. It would appear that medications for treating depression can have different effects on autistics than they do on neurotypicals. Negative side effects from medications seem to be more common with autistics, such as increased aggression, hyperactivity, and agitation. Not to mention how some medications have completely different results, or absolutely none at all. It's true that every medication works differently for every person, but it seems to be harder to find the proper medication for autistics. And let me just tell you, before I was diagnosed as autistic and they were trying to find the right medications for me, I went through a lot of them. Oh my goodness. It was a complete disaster. Oh my goodness. In the end, more research needs to be done. For some reason, people have been studying depression and neurotypicals for decades, but only recently thought to research in neurodivergence. Go figure.